Welcome to another session. Welcome also to the final in a series of sessions that I began a few weeks ago. I themed the series Relationships that Men Should Avoid. So far, I have covered, I believe, 14 different archetypes of relationships men should avoid, especially men who are looking for relationships and primarily marriage. In today's session, I bring to a close the series. Um, the topic for today, and the final topic, is women with issues. Now, this is going to be a broad generalization. I think what I'm going to share will be perceived and seen to be broadly true across a broad demographics of people. When I talk about issues, I am putting together, I am grouping together the following: people who have trauma of whatever form or kind, people who are bipolar of whatever shape or size, people with mental issues, people with daddy issues and mommy issues, and including that will be people with acute, extreme, what I call syndrome type issues, whether that be only child syndrome, last child syndrome, first child syndrome, middle child syndrome, the extremes of those. The reason I have chosen this as the last topic is primarily because as men, for some reason, and this is not an attack on men, and don't say this to shame you, but for some reason, most men have a hero complex. Most men believe that we are supposed to be the saviors of women. And many of us attempt to turn a H into a housewife. We try to take a damsel that is in distress, despite her brokenness, and try to make her into an angel, a princess. We always and often fail. The reason: we are not gods. We cannot convert people and change them from what they are to what we wish they should be. And more importantly, we tend to do such without the desire and the eagerness and the longing coming from the woman. And therefore, at some point, we have what we call the rubber band effect. You pull a piece of rubber band long enough, and you might think you've extended its diameter. You hold it long enough, and it stays in the same position. You let go, and you have a snapback to its original default position. One of the reasons I encourage men to avoid women with issues is because you can't change them. Most of the time, you cannot help them. When they show you who they are, accept it, believe it, wish them well, disconnect, walk away respectfully, with honor, with love. I have seen people I know attempt to sacrifice on the altar of love their health, their wealth, for a woman that they have been trying endlessly in a futile attempt to change. Now, I have no issues with, I should make it very clear, with people who generally have issues. We all do. I have issues, you have issues. The question is not whether you have issues. The question is, what is the degree? What is the significance? And most importantly, what have you done to alleviate, to make meaningful progress over time? If someone came to me and said, I'm bipolar, I wish them well, wish them all the best, but I will not be with you because on a balance of probabilities, it's going to end badly for you, me, or both of us. But if you came to me and said, I'm bipolar, but I am on some medication, and I have been consistent on those medications, and I have never failed once, and these are the medications I am taking, and I would like your help in monitoring and keeping me accountable, and I want to join you in a union, and I'm not looking for you to change me, but I'm being transparent in sharing that I am doing everything according to what my doctor says and what my medical supervisors or professions or professionals or directors or consultants have instructed. And so far so good. I have never had an issue because I have been faithful and I have stuck to the directions and instructions. That's a different kettle of fish. Someone comes to me and says, I have issues, traumatic issues, mental issues from the past. My first question is, what's the name of your counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, a mental health profession, your coach? How regularly do you see them? How long have you seen them for? What improvements have you seen? Has there been any progress? How long do you intend to continue? You see, people adapt to circumstances and unfortunately make adaptability a lifestyle. We're supposed to start the process of self-improvement, go through the process, and come to a place of graduation, maturity, where we see a big difference between what we used to be and who we are today. People who make the same mistakes as they did 5 years and blame the fact that they had childhood traumatic issues as the cause of their poor decisions simply indicate to me that they haven't grown, they haven't changed, and there's been no progress. It's not whether you have issues. The question is, what have you done about it? Now, if you came to me and said I had trauma from my past, whatever that trauma might be, I make no judgment. My question is, will it reoccur? Will I have to pay the price and carry the burden and be responsible for sins and errors from the past for which I did not cause? And how much would that price be? And is it fair? Now, least you think this is perhaps an unfair recommendation from a man to younger men. Let me put it to you in a different way that I think you will understand. If I came to you and I said, you're about to buy a house. There are 2 houses on the street. Both of them are Victorian buildings. Mid-century. They look incredible. One of them, you've had a surveyor inspect the building, but you haven't just done a normal home buyer survey. You've done a structural survey. It's cost you a little bit more. The structural survey was supported by a home buyer survey. And so you have 2 reports done by 2 independent professionals who have come back and said the value of the house, as estimated by them, is consistent. It's actually slightly higher than the price you want to pay. And therefore, it is a good purchase. We'll put that to the side. And on the other side, we have the building, similar to the first, on the same street, similar period, Victorian. You appoint a structural engineer and you appoint a surveyor. The surveyor produces his report, but in his report, as part of the conclusion, he states that due to the issues he identified, that he cannot guarantee that the price and the value are fair. In other words, he says there are a number of risks. He highlights the risks as red and yellow and amber, and he draws to your attention and to the bank's attention. In this particular instance, we say with option 1 is a cash buy, and option 2, you're getting a loan or a mortgage. He draws to your attention or the bank's attention that additional checks should be done. The structural engineer does his assessment and comes back and says that there are issues with the stability of the foundation and risks, that there might be some possibility, and a possibility that is about 50% and therefore strongly probable of subsidence issues. It could be an issue about soil movement. And the recommendation is that perhaps a further intrusive survey should be done, where you can identify whether this is progressive, long-standing, or whether it was something of the past and therefore stopped. But he also makes it clear that the study, when completed, the additional intrusive survey and inspection, when completed, may not identify with 100% accuracy that the problem has been resolved, and therefore there is a huge risk. And I asked you, if you had the cash, would you buy the first property? I would hope your answer would be yes. It's been reviewed, it's been surveyed, it's a beautiful building, and there are no issues, structural. What people do not understand about buildings is the substructure is the most important part of the building. The superstructure, what is above ground, what people see, the walls, the pillars, the windows, the interior, and everything inside, make up what we call the superstructure. Now we take away what we call fixed furniture, fittings, and equipment. Those are loose. But generally speaking, think about everything in the house. If you turn it upside down, it stays part of the superstructure, including interior decor, such as plasterboarding or loose fittings, or rather hard fittings. The substructure is the foundation. Most people do not see the foundation of a building. It's below ground most of the time, and we don't really care. We focus on what we see, what we can touch, what we can feel, what we can smell. If a structural engineer came into a building and saw a crack on a wall, if a surveyor walks into a building and saw a crack on the window, they'll bring to your attention the crack, but the building will be structurally sound. If, on the other hand, there is an issue identified by an inspector that says that the substructure is unsafe, there's something wrong with the foundation, it doesn't matter how beautiful the building is, the building will be condemned. Beautiful superstructure, poor substructure, the building is ruled out as not being suitable for habitation by humans and even by animals. Why? It is unsafe. Women who have issues, and I make it very, very, very clear, this applies to men. It's not a sexist thing. I'm just speaking from the perspective of a man now. The same idea applies. Men who have issues, such as that I have described, data issues, trauma issues, mental issues, depression issues, issues from the past in whatever form they come in, bipolar issues, women should avoid such men. Are there exceptions to the rule? Of course. But the exceptions only apply to people who have demonstrated, not by hope, not by promises, but by results, that they have addressed those issues, therapy, counseling, seeking professionals, and sticking to the professionals' recommendations without fail. They've never lapsed back or relapsed. Those are the only exceptions. Men in choosing women, in as much as you have a superhero complex and this paradox of wanting to be the one who saves the woman, please recognize that it would break you. There will be confrontations in the future. There will be arguments in the future. And let me address something that I think is important. Many people might say, I don't have trauma issues, I don't have bipolar issues, I don't have depression issues, I don't have data issues, I don't have mum issues. There's another segment of women that men should avoid. Women who, generally speaking, have a disagreeable spirit. And that disagreeable spirit is manifested in a number of ways. A calling and a draw to argument, fight, emotional attacks on one another, physical confrontation, or just having a negative energy. I call it the Jezebel's spirit. I put that in the same category as women with an archetype that you should avoid. As a man, what you want is peace. I'll use a good example. Some days ago, I was speaking with my beloved, and we were talking with some other people who we care very much about, some loved ones. And as the conversation went on, I noted my beloved made reference to someone else, and she explained that it was important that couples have an ability to contend with each other. You can disagree without being disagreeable, but you should also do that in good faith, with honor, and from a place of peace, looking for a solution, recognizing that whenever the cause that you believe in or you're fighting for is held too dearly, then the relationship is always at stake. Or put it differently, whenever the cause that you believe in is held as primacy and above the system or the infrastructure that supports and undergirds all parties, that infrastructure is at risk. And she was explaining how it's important to contend, but do so in good faith and from a place of honor and respect. Men make the mistake of thinking that the fact that there's arguments that take place regularly is synonymous with the whole process of contending with someone. It isn't. There are some women who have an inherent need for battle. I said to someone some time ago, never forget that some battles do not have rewards. I wrote that in my second book, The Good Life. The importance of choosing battles with rewards. And in relationships, you have to treat each other not from the perspective of win-lose, because if you did, and if you come to the table with such a perspective, it will always about you treating the person as though you are in battle with the person. With your loved one, in a relationship or in a union, there should be no war. You can have disagreements, you can have conversations, but there are some people who perpetually have to be in a state of war. The best sex you have normally is make-up sex. The best moment you have is just after you've stopped fighting. The best holidays is when you've not spoken to each other for 2 weeks, and then you reconcile, and then the next day or so you book a holiday, and then you travel for a few days, and it's bliss. That is dysfunctional. As a man, you have to recognize and learn how to vet women and identify women who have dysfunctional perspectives, dysfunctional spirits, demeanors. I talk about the need for serenity in a man's presence. Confrontation should be avoided from a man's perspective. We contend with life as it is. We go out every day and we contend with other men as it is. When we come home, we want peace. When we are around a woman, she should bring us peace. She should be like a muse, inspirational, magnetic in her appeal, soft, gentle. It should be such like Delilah, where you're able to give your secrets just by her stroking your head or speaking to you in a kind way. Now, I'm reminded very much by some of my favorite stories from the books of antiquities. You know, David sent a message to Nabal, the rich man, to say, listen, we're warriors. We've been protecting your sheep and your cattle for all this long time, weeks, months, whatever. We're hungry. Can you give us a small goat, sheep, so we can eat? And Nabal sends back word, disrespecting David. David, in his anger, puts on his shield, says to his men, put on your shields, put on your swords. He picks up his sword and he says, we're going to go to Nabal's home and we're going to kill everyone, every man alive, and we're going to slaughter all the live produce and on all the livestock. On the way, and prior to David knowing, the servant of Nabal hears what he said to the servant of David and goes to his wife, Abigail, I think, and she says, listen, this is what your husband has said to this great warriors. It doesn't sound good. Now, what does this woman do? She gathers some of her servants and prepares a few meals and a few loaves of bread and travels in the direction of David and sees them coming, stops on the road, gets off a camel or a horse, spreads on the road all of the food she's brought and all the gifts. And when David arrives, she starts to speak to the king in David at the time when the kid in David was going to cause harm and be like a child. And she starts to speak to David in a manner that raises his head from looking downwards to looking upwards. She reminds him of how great he is and that how they know about his story, about how he defeated Goliath. And in a very short moment, David's persona, someone who is going for war, changes and he decides, no, this is not necessary. He returns back. A short while later, Nabal, the foolish man, falls down and dies. David hears about the fact that Nabal is dead, and his first move was to send word to the wife to say, I'm sorry your husband is dead, but by the way, I'm coming your way. I'm traveling in that direction. If you don't mind, I'll stop over and say hello. David ends up marrying this woman. Why? She knew how to talk to him. As a man, you have to learn how to choose women who know how to talk to you. Women are emotional creatures, but it doesn't absolve them of the responsibility of knowing how to speak to a man. Most young men these days are awful at vetting women and therefore choose women who speak to them like they are their children. Women who speak to them in a manner that is dishonoring, disrespectful, who create war in his space. There is no serenity, there is no peace, there is no honor, primarily because she doesn't admire you, she doesn't honor you, she doesn't respect you, and she doesn't look up to you. It's important as a man to understand that you cannot change people. And as I bring today's session to a close, you cannot change people. Do not try to change her. When you find out, and you should ask, at the start of the interaction and conversation and communication, ask about issues. You got any issues from the past? Are there a few things I should know about? Ask questions in a direct manner. Infer from her behavior. Ask questions about her from her friends and her close ones. Don't be shy and don't feel like you're doing something wrong. You're bonding yourself to another person. If that person is a liability and they come with trauma, issues from the past, mental, psychological, depression, whatever it may be, it's important to recognize that she would make a perfect mate for someone else, but not you. Now, I hope this has been very useful, and this brings us to a close. A series of sessions that I started 2 weeks ago. I will start in tomorrow's session a new topic, and I hope you like it.